The government simply buys stock in a corporation like any of us buying stock. It has no say in the debts that the corporation already has.
But Judge, the company has already taken on $160 billion in outright welfare infusions. That's more than the company was ever worth. It's more than it'll ever be worth. It should be wholly owned. It's a welfare institution.
Let me just hold on for a minute. We're joined by Congressman Ron Paul, who's our regular weekly guest here on Freedom Watch. Congressman Paul from the rotunda of the Capitol building, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Nice to be with you again.
All right, you Peter Schiff from Euro Pacific Capital. I'm not sure where on the planet he is, but he's not in the room here with us, joins us as well. Peter, thank you for joining us.
Judge, thanks for having me. It's a very, very big day. I know you guys heard the announcement from the Fed, but anybody who thinks that deflation is coming had better wake up and look at what the government is doing. You know, people are going to say this is a giant buy signal for Treasuries. This is the biggest sell signal ever. Treasuries are rising today because traders think they're going to buy their Treasuries and sell them to the Fed. But, you know, if the Fed's going to print an extra $1 trillion to buy treasuries and agency debt, they're destroying the value of the dollar, which is plunging right now as we speak.
All right,
the Fed is going to be overwhelmed by people all around the world looking to unload of their treasuries on the Fed. And this is a head fake move. Treasury prices are going to plunge because of what not rise.
All right, I want to make sure that Congressman Paul and Peter Schiff are aware that in the room with me, in Freedom Watch, in the Strategy Room studio at FoxNews.com, are Andy Levy, my Fox News colleague from Red Eye, who rarely sees the light of day since Red Eye is on at 2 o'clock in the morning. And if you ever watch 3 o'clock in the morning, if you ever watch it, you know why it's on at that time of day. Mark Skusin, the economist, and my good buddy, my wonderful buddy from Fox Business Network, defender of the free market, Cody Willard. Congressman Paul, what's the latest nonsense going on down there about government efforts to interfere with the private lawful contracts between AIG and its executives for the bonuses that were paid last weekend?
Well, I sort of wished it were so simple. It's not that quite simple. I mean, there's nothing left of the private market. This is not, I mean, they have done so much to violate contracts that I think that is incidental. This is just grandstanding by politicians who made a lot of mistakes. They passed out billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, and now they're getting a lot of grief from the taxpayer. Now they're going to have to pretend they're going to clean up the mess by collecting $100 and some millions of dollars and pretend that they're acting responsible. This is so outrageous, but I think of the contract we have with the taxpayer. The contract that I believe in says we should never steal from the taxpayer and bail these companies out. And once we do it, we have this horrendous mess. So I don't see this as a free market decision to be made. I see this as a monster that we in the Congress created.
Were you outraged as outraged as I was when some of your colleagues on the other side of the Capitol building, Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut and Senator Charles Schumer of New York, as well as some members of the House of Representatives, called for a 98% or 100% tax on these bonuses? I mean, don't these people read the Constitution? Don't they understand that at some point a tax becomes a punishment? It becomes confiscatory, and you can't aim a specific tax at a specific group of taxpayers because you don't like the way they earn their money? Do these people in the Congress recognize any restraint on their ability to enact any laws they want, or is it just what they think they can get away with?
Well, I still see this as a mixed bag. The way you describe it, you know, you're perfectly correct. But they shouldn't have had the money. So what do you do about it? It isn't a market. If the market had been working and we were working really with contracts, you wouldn't steal from the taxpayer and give it to these guys. They would have been in bankruptcy. There wouldn't have been any of these bonuses. If they felt obligated under contract, the government shouldn't interfere. But now everybody's screaming that we should enforce these contracts, and all they do down here is violate contracts endlessly. So I don't think it's an easy answer here, but this mostly is grandstanding to pretend that we're doing something. But your point of them violating the contract or the Constitution by targeting a tax, believe me, that's not going to bother anybody here. They do so much others that this will be incidental. They're mainly looking at this politically, nothing else. Nothing else is going on here than political grandstanding.
Peter Schiff, are you concerned that members of Congress would attempt to use their power to isolate unpopular contracts and to purport to interfere with them, to impair their obligation, or to nullify them, either by enacting legislation that declares them illegal or by taxing them at a 100% tax rate.
Well, I'm afraid that the next thing they're going to do is they're going to pass a bill to specifically tax Peter Schiff and put me in the 90% bracket. I mean, the minute you give them the authority to target these taxes and forget about any concept of uniformity, if they can target a specific group, a specific industry, they can do whatever they want.
There are cases in which the Supreme Court has said the Congress... Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I need that. I thought this was just for Ron Paul. I'm sorry.
But, you know, the whole thing is ridiculous. They're talking about these contracts. These contracts wouldn't even exist if they had let these companies go bankrupt, which is what they should have done.
Of course.
And now that they bailed them out, now they're upset that they're using the money to pay themselves bonuses. Look at the bonuses that Freddie Mac is handing out, or Fannie Mae.
Right.
I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. They create one problem. I mean, they do one thing wrong, and then it creates other problems.
The federal government itself... The federal government itself just paid the director or the CEO of the post office, whose base salary is $600,000. That's $200,000 more than the president. A bonus of $175,000. So this gentleman made $775,000 in 2008, even though he ran a deficit of $6 billion. This is the same government that's complaining about this. My fear, Peter, and then I'm going to pass this to some of the others who want to put some questions to you and Congressman Paul. My fear, Peter and Congressman Paul, let's do Congressman Paul first, is that binding contracts, natural rights, the right to bind myself and to bind someone else to me in a written agreement, these fundamental rights, if the Congress thinks it can interfere with them, then commercial transactions as we understand them will no longer ever exist again. If I have to worry that a contract that I sign to buy a piece of real estate, to sell a piece of real estate, to give a speech, to anything that I would do, might become unpopular and the Congress could undo it, of what value is my personal natural right to engage in a binding contract, Congressman Paul?
Well, I think I agree 100% of what you said if it's with two individuals coming together with a voluntary contract. The confusion comes up is when these contracts are done with money stolen from the American people.
Understood.
What if our Congress promises a lot of money to somebody? Do you call that a contract? We might be taxing the next generation because we have a contract. The government signed this contract. But so you have to be very precise on how you define this contract. How can they make a contract with taxpayers' money? Promise these funds, oh yes, the government will send us some money and we're going to pay all these bonuses out of money that they illegally took from the people. So it's to me a very mixed bag, and it's not easy. But I know exactly what you're saying about the principle of contract, and believe me, I get exasperated here because Congress and the courts really don't care a bit about contracts, and I think that's one of the reasons we're in this kind of mess, because the government's more involved in breaking contracts. You take the monetary issue. How many times has our government interfered and broken that contract? So the issue of contracts is very important, but this is not a simple, regular, voluntary contract between two individuals that we're talking about.
But Peter, are you concerned that if the government could use the excuse of this is taxpayer dollars, so we're going to bust the contract, the camel's nose is under the tent, and it will look for other unpopular contracts, whether government cash is involved or not, and interfere with those?
Obviously, that's the problem. Once they get their nose under the tent, I mean, it's just the beginning. They're going to move into other areas, probably that have nothing to do with the receipt of government money. Once they have the precedent that the government can set aside contracts that they don't like, that the government can target specific groups of individuals or people for higher taxes than other people because they don't like those individuals, they don't like where they earn their money or how they earn their money. And, a lot of people are going to start, in the inflationary time period that we're about to live through, there are going to be a lot of people that aren't going to want to contract in dollars. They're going to want to contract in gold bullion. They're going to want clauses in their contracts, using euros or Swiss francs. And is the government going to set those aside? Is the government going to make it impossible for people to protect their wealth and to actually contract for future payments and monies that are actually going to have value?
Our panel is now going to question Congressman
if I may
Paul
add,
and Peter Schiff, starting with Cody Willard.
And this question comes from my brother, Lance Willard, who is a tax-paying, hard-working Texan who actually is the one who introduced me to Ron Paul, Congressman Ron Paul, in concept many years ago. And, Congressman, he actually asked me to ask you, how and where is the transparency for we the people who are funding what is now the equivalent of 8,000 $100 million projects that are supposed to jumpstart our economy. Will there be any transparency